Hi, I'm Daniel Nyman. On behalf of the Forum for Healthcare Strategists, as well as our partners at Salesforce, welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We're looking forward to a timely discussion on engaging consumers with custom experiences. Strategically and thoughtfully, UPMC has grown a world-class digital marketing function. Today, you'll hear how digital marketing enables UPMC to meet consumers where they are in their healthcare journeys, engage them with custom experiences, and help them find the care they need. One note before we begin. If you'd like to ask a question, please enter it into the question and answer pane located on the bottom of your screen at any time. Our speakers will respond to as many questions as they can in the time we have. With that, I'll turn the program over to Ben Seyden, Executive Strategist, Healthcare and Life Sciences at Salesforce, who will be leading today's discussion. Ben?
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Greetings from the Chicago area. And at Salesforce, we always begin with gratitude. So thank you to all of those who have joined today's webinar. You are on the front lines. You are making such a big impact on the way that healthcare engages with its patients. So thank you for your time today, for your partnership, and most of all, thank you for inspiring us every day to innovate and help transform healthcare. Today, we have a great group of people. Our speakers are Lindsey O'Donnell. She is an accomplished marketer with UPMC. She is the Director of Digital Strategy. And Christine Lesniakowski, Senior Manager of Digital Media Strategy, also with UPMC. So again, thank you so much for being with us today and for being our inspiration. As a reminder, Salesforce is a publicly traded company, so please make any buying decisions based on products that are commercially available today. And let's talk about our agenda for today. I know there is a lot of buzz around privacy and consent due to some recent publications. And that is a really good subject for a future session, but is outside the scope of what we're going to talk about today. Today, we will discuss my favorite topic, how consumer engagement and experience can be improved with consumer journeys. And I love this topic. Up until recently, I was a digital marketer at a major healthcare system in the Midwest and got the opportunity to do a lot of digital journeys, and excited about being able to hear the story of the journey of the UPMC's digital evolution, the foundational steps required to build a program to scale, and the success that they have seen to date. They have a strategically and ethically data strategy that drives their success. And following their presentation, we will have a moderated Q&A discussion if time allows. Well, I wanted to talk about this quote that I heard at a healthcare conference recently. Zev Neuwirth is the author of Reframing Healthcare, a Roadmap for Creating Disruptive Change. He's a physician, executive, and a podcast host with more than 25 years of experience. And I love what he says. The digital technology and retail disruptors entering healthcare are not just consumer-oriented, but are actually consumer-obsessed. And if legacy healthcare stakeholders don't realize that, they'll become increasingly less relevant. What we're seeing in the marketplace is that patients are demanding higher levels of personalization than ever before. Every healthcare consumer is also a subscriber to a service like Amazon Prime or Netflix. They are used to organizations that know them and recommend their next steps. And the companies that are entering healthcare as disruptors are already famous for this personalized engagement. And as you can see with this these metrics here that come from various different studies, sending timely messages is no longer good enough. They must be relevant. They must be personalized in order for me as the recipient, as the consumer, to care and to respond. 2/3 of consumers expect that companies have a relationship with them, understand their unique needs, and healthcare providers have so much information about who I am that they should be able to anticipate my health needs. Most providers, however, are not doing this today. 48% of consumers will actually unsubscribe if they receive a message with their name on it that is not helpful to their stage of life. And most of us expect our offers to be personalized, 52% or more. Best Buy, for example, knows that the people who recently purchased a big screen TV are most likely to be in the market for another one, which is why Best Buy ads are always in my TV offers. So we understand that as we get better at this, we see better performance. Qualtrics actually says that industry leaders in user experience achieve 80% better results than those who are not prioritizing this kind of engagement. And it's not just overall, it's in healthcare as well. All of these trends are carried all the way through patient and consumer care because Amazon, Walgreens, they get it right, and they're coming in to disrupt the industry. $30 billion of venture capital was invested into the digital health space in 2021. And at the end of last year, the Walgreens chief clinical officer said, what we announced in October at our investor day was a pretty bold vision for how we're transforming the company and evolving to become more of a healthcare company. Walgreens, no longer going to be just selling, they're going to be a healthcare company. The landscape of healthcare marketing is changing rapidly. So how do you make experiences connected, omnichannel, and personalized? Well, the answer is consumer journeys. Personalized consumer journeys can consider individual preferences. They can meet consumer demands, and they can anticipate the needs with proactive engagement. To move from a campaign-centric to a journey-centric discipline requires the right infrastructure that it can efficiently leverage data to empower relevant and meaningful experiences and have the ability to measure the impact and optimize. One of the most advanced marketing teams in the industry is at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. UPMC's team has been on a digital transformation journey since 2019. And our speakers for today's session, Lindsey and Christine, have been the leaders of this incredible transformation. The team took an iterative approach of build, measure, learn, and optimize, and developed that approach on top of a strong foundation of people, process, and data to really humanize healthcare. So without further ado, I'm happy to turn it over to Lindsey and Christine to share their story.
Way to kick it off in 2022. You would think we would all know at this point in time to take ourselves off of mute before we talk, but alas, I did not do that. So Ben, thank you again for the introduction. Christine and I are very happy to be here and to share the story of UPMC and the digital marketing team and the work that we've done over the last several years in order to become what I consider a really world-class digital marketing agency, if you will, and team for sure. So a little bit about UPMC here in Pittsburgh. We like to think everybody knows who we are, and they do here, but we are actually a really large healthcare system if you're not familiar with UPMC. Our history is here in Pittsburgh. We are the largest non-government employer in Pennsylvania. We employ over 90,000 people, have 40 hospitals in New York, Western Maryland, and Pennsylvania, and 800 doctors' offices and outpatient sites. We also are the largest medical insurers in Western PA with 4 million members. So let me jump right into our story and how we became the digital marketing team that we are today. So digital marketing has expanded the opportunity for UPMC to meet our consumers where they are in their healthcare journey and find the care that they need. Understanding and analyzing how our customers are moving through their digital footprint and operating is important for converting leads. And even if they do not convert in the early stages of their healthcare journey, it at least helps us to ensure they have made a connection with UPMC. As Ben mentioned earlier, we were very strategic and thoughtful in how we grew from a few members with focused expertise in the foundational elements of digital marketing. Think website and SEO, but very disparate teams within the digital marketing space. And in essence, what we did is we built a world-class digital marketing agency. We have many degrees of expertise and a lot of areas of focus. But the team is built around technology and innovation. It's at the core of everything that we do. We pride ourselves on supporting our consumers' needs for health and wellness content, but we also provide opportunities to connect to the advanced care providers that patients are seeking on a regular basis. From ideation to execution, digital marketing at UPMC, we have it all covered. To talk a little bit about how we got here, you'll notice the slide, our journey to date. We have a very strong and long partnership with Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And really, it was the impetus for the growth of the department. When I joined UPMC in 2015, seems longer, but when I joined back in 2015, we were a very small group. And again, as I mentioned a little bit ago, we had a very disparate group of people doing digital marketing, as a lot of places probably still have. We had, again, a few SEOs, we had a few people working on the website, and we had a few social media folks, and they all reported to different people. The infrastructure wasn't really there to create the right type of marketing journeys that needed to take place. And so when I came on board, I was tasked with figuring some of that out, and how do we really build not only an infrastructure of resources from a people standpoint, but what I joked about day one was, well, what are we using to make these journeys happen? We can't just hope them into existence, right? And at the time in 2015, everybody was talking about having to build out very specific personas. And I didn't like the idea of personas, and I still don't. And I say this just about every time I'm given the opportunity to talk about building journeys. And I like to use myself as an example. So I am a mother of two in the age group. I won't give away what that is, but I'm in the age group that is a decision maker from a healthcare standpoint. But I'm very different than Christine, who is in the same age group. I won't say if it's less or more, but Christine and I are in the same age group. We're both parents of two, but that doesn't make us the same cohort at all. We have very different needs, very different lifestyles, and our children are very different individuals. So how are we going to look at the individual and not just the cohort, if you will? So in 2016, we started a multi-year lift. As you will see, we're still working on that lift. And it included adopting and integrating the best digital platforms, Sitecore, Salesforce, Domo. And we also had to partner with we took our internal expertise and partnered with leading agencies that could really help us. We grew each area equally and equitably, meaning you can't have really great SEO, but you don't have any sort of content channels to push SEO out on. So how do we look at that? How do we make sure we were growing each area to support the other area? We had to make sure we handled all the day-to-day marketing needs within UPMC, but we also had to create the opportunity to think about the needs the market was creating and the needs that were changing day to day. As a marketer, especially as a digital marketer, you know that Google likes to throw an algorithm update every few months, every year, just to really throw us off of our track. And the ever-changing world of consumer data and targeting, we take that very seriously. So taking all of those things into consideration outside of just campaign structure and supporting campaigns, we had to figure out how to support the overall digital marketing needs of UPMC. In the last several years, we have grown the UPMC digital footprint and increased our share of voice, online conversions, content creation, and our website engagement exponentially. So how did we do that? Where do we start? I think that's the biggest question for a lot of marketing teams. Where do we start? You can basically pick any kind of area and you can start there, really. And that would be, again, a time for a whole nother webinar. We could talk about that. But where did we start? We started with building an opted-in audience via our email strategy. And how did we do that? So we started with what we had. And what was that? That was email, and that was exact target. All of you who have been doing marketing for a while might remember ExactTarget. They were obviously bought by our friends at Salesforce a long time ago, but UPMC back in 2012 was using ExactTarget for email marketing. We also had a really strong partner in an agency that was really helping us execute, but what we weren't doing was thinking about long-term use of that information. So what we had to do was really think about structuring that data in a way that would make it easy for us to not only create an email communication, but all of the other types of communications from a digital marketing standpoint, and making sure we had the right type of content. Because we already had a relationship and a trusted platform, we began to look at content growth and building out a robust and strategic email marketing strategy. We had a few thousand members in 2012. Now we proudly like to say that we have over 2.5 million opted-in subscribers. This is an audience that is not only interested in what we have, they are highly engaged. We run hundreds of email marketing campaigns annually, and that's driven by over 100 different newsletters. We started with HealthBeat. HealthBeat was a newsletter that was driven out of the HealthBeat blog. If you have a minute today, go and visit. But HealthBeat is the digital footprint and the digital brand for UPMC. We used to just take the content and send out one newsletter, and then we use that newsletter to continue to try to figure out what kind of content were our audiences interested in. And that is really what helped us to go from a few thousand opted-ins to 2.5 million and continually growing. We recently launched regional newsletters to deliver dynamic local content to areas outside of Pittsburgh. If you are familiar with Pittsburgh, or if you've ever been to Pittsburgh, it's a strong culture here. We like to call ourselves Yinzers sometimes. And what that means is what we think is really important might be really important to us, but it probably changes if you go 100 miles north or 100 miles south. And how do we make sure that we're giving the type of content that is important to people in those regions? So if we look at our engagement data, it tells us a story of what our consumers are looking for. And how we deliver that is through dynamic local content to areas outside of Pittsburgh. Christine, who is my colleague on the call, will go into that a little bit more in detail right after I talk a little bit more about our SMS strategy. So in addition to our email strategy, we have a focus on SMS. It's still a growing channel for us, but we have increased our subscribers by well over 6,000% in the last 2 years. COVID definitely played a part because people needed and wanted information as soon as they could get it. But what we recognized also was the opportunity to provide a very needed service to our consumers in that very critical time in health history and healthcare history. Health and wellness information delivered to the phones right in the palm of their hands on topics that they were interested in. And that was really key to growing our SMS. It really helped us to go from, again, maybe I think we had a few dozen subscribers in SMS pre-COVID to a lot more in that time span. And it really has given us another very engaged with channel, and it helps us learn more about our consumers and the type of information and events that they might be interested in. So now I'm really happy to turn it over to my colleague, Christine, who with about 15 years or more of marketing experience, both in the agency side and now with UPMC. I always say that she is really the Einstein behind the work that we do here. And she has really crafted the infrastructure along with the team to really build out a lot of the work that we're going to talk about. So I'm happy to now turn it over to Christine.
Thank you. I like the Einstein reference. So,
there's a little Salesforce in there too.
So thank you, Lindsay. And Ben, I'm excited to talk about our journey as well. So this is an example of our preference center. So Lindsay just talked through, we have a large email database, a large SMS database. We really put that focus over the last few years on increasing our subscribers. But in late 2020, we actually relaunched our preference center. It was more text-based previously. There were different versions of it depending on the newsletter, but we did a complete overhaul and really aggregated all of our consumer communications into one place. We drastically improved the user experience, the design, and we have seen really great success come out of that. I think I'll talk about that in a couple slides, but as you can kind of see on the right, and I encourage you to sign up for our emails, and then you can access your preference center, because this preference center is unique to each person. So you can only access it through your email. And that allows us to give an easy way for consumers to toggle on and off different newsletters. They can see all of our 100+ newsletters that are available. And then you can kind of see in that purple area we also were able to use the Preference Center as a communication channel. So not only is it a place where they can go and see what newsletters we have, but we could also feature different newsletters depending on seasonality, you know, Heart Health Month, for example, or align with campaigns that we have in market. There's an SMS subscription kind of right there in the middle. So really just another place where we can communicate and say, hey, are you looking for more information? You know, let us know what your content preferences are so that we can start to use that to personalize the messaging you're getting from us. And then we also recently, earlier this year, launched a profile pop-up. So Lindsey mentioned a little bit about regional email, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well. But, you know, originally when we started collecting email addresses, we really were focused on the email. But knowing that we have such a large subscriber base, we have regional locations outside of Pittsburgh, we wanted to make sure that if people were interested in that more localized content, that we could deliver it for them. So right now, when you access your Preference Center, you will get a pop-up if you haven't accessed it in the last, certain amount of time, and it'll ask if you'd like to complete, your name, your zip code, so that we can use that information to deliver you better messaging. And I'll talk a little bit about the results of that when we get to the end. But overall, we've really seen success, and it's only been live for, I guess, a year and a half now. But one of the other things that we're noticing by doing reporting on this and tracking the engagement with it is people are subscribing to multiple newsletters. So when they come to our Preference Center, maybe they're opting out of something, maybe they're adding something else, but it never tends to be just one. We tend to see people subscribing to 5 or 6 different newsletters when they visit our Preference Center. And again, when I get to reporting, I'll talk a little bit about that performance.
Had to come off mute again. So thanks, Christine. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we set up the consumer journeys and how we create the type of content and the amount of content that we need in order to support hundreds of email journeys that we do. And I mentioned earlier on that we do have a robust email marketing strategy. That means we need a robust content strategy. And I'm not able to see some of the questions coming in, but I have to imagine that a lot of them are going to be around how do we create content? So we are very lucky in that leadership identified early on. Again, as I mentioned before, if you're building out more channels, you got to have content to put in those channels. And so when I talked about how we built a department, we thought about that. And we thought about, if we're going to create more email, if we're going to create customized journeys, what do we need? We need content. So the leadership team within UPMC thought about that. And we actually have a digital marketing department content team. So the content team at UPMC sits in the digital marketing, and we are able in the digital marketing department, and we are able to not only brainstorm with them, we have weekly meetings where we have basically what I would kind of liken to an editorial board, where we talk about breaking news, monkeypox, for instance. I don't know if they've changed the name of that. I hope they do. But, that came out, and we all started kind of scrambling, and, the early days of COVID, what is this? Do we need to have content about it? We go and we look at our SEO, and we see, are people searching for this? Do we see spikes in searches? And we create content based around that. Again, we also create content that is necessary to support our clinical marketing initiatives and our clinical marketing needs. I have a digital strategy services team that sits within our department, and they meet with our clinical marketing teams on a regular basis. And we get to understand what are system-wide initiatives and what are system-wide priorities. And do we need to create additional content for those newsletters, for an HVI newsletter, for a Hillman Cancer Center newsletter? And so what we do is we house all of that information on the Health Beat blog, which I mentioned earlier. And we've published about 40 articles a month on Health Beat. And that is content that is all types of health and wellness content, from mental health to Pride Month health, to, anxiety and depression. It's not always that kind of very clinical type of content that you would find on a website. We try to make it broader, and we try to give everybody a little bit of the information that they need, and then cross-link over to our website if we need to look at a more specific type of condition or treatment there. So we do rely heavily on SEO. You can never forget our SEO team. They are one of the most valuable pieces of a digital marketing team for sure. And so what we do is, once we publish all of that content fuels the newsletters that we send out. And aside from articles, we also create podcasts and different types of graphics. And we also do that so that we can keep our social channels very engaged and lively as well, because we draw a lot of content and a lot of subscribers back from social media. So we have, again, different areas within digital marketing, all focused on different areas, but mainly it all comes back to one thing. How are we building an audience of engaged consumers and engaged potential patients that really want to engage with UPMC, know about us, and most importantly, trust us? You know, in healthcare that you don't really know you need healthcare until you need the healthcare. So it's not like another type of brand where people are looking for a tennis shoe or a t-shirt. They're really looking for information that is going to be a vital part of their life and potentially life-changing medicine and life-changing care that they need. And so we want to make sure all of our channels are pointing back to the database so we can collect information that is out there and that they're giving us, and we are able then to share their journey or put them on a journey that gets them to the information that they're most interested in when they need it most. Christine, did you want to expand on that some?
Yeah, so knowing that we have all this content, like Lindsey mentioned, there's a lot of different channels in which people can subscribe. So they can subscribe through our brand or service line campaigns, through our blog promotions, or through the blog website, our, upmc.com website. And we look at all of those things, the entry source of what they subscribed on, the content that they're engaging in within their email, to look for opportunities to expand subscriptions as well as overall subscribers. We talked a little bit already about the preference center and how we're really able to use that as an increase of like, hey, this is the type of content I'm interested in. But we also leverage interactive emails. That's been a great feature through Salesforce that we can put as part of our welcome journeys, that we can ask, what type of content are you looking for? The more, hand-raising information that people give us, the better we can customize their communications. That includes regional too. And actually we can jump to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit more about the regional focus. So earlier this year, we launched our regional content strategy. As Lindsey and I both mentioned earlier, we have markets outside of Pittsburgh, and we really wanted to make sure we were delivering more relevant content to them. So right now we started more at the broader region. Here's a couple examples of Western Maryland and West Central, but we're also currently working on subsections of each of these regions because, we know even Pittsburgh as a whole, that's one region, but there are different pockets of communication that might be more relevant to one side of Pittsburgh versus the other. So, that's true everywhere. And we always want to be giving our consumers the opportunity to raise their hand and say, I'm looking for more relevant information. So we're working on that strategy right now. The opt-ins for these are very similar to the other channels, but really we've put a focus on how do we ask consumers for their zip code, for their geo information in the different things that we do, whether it's campaign marketing within our preference center, within that profile pop-up, so that they can raise their hand again and tell us, I'd like even more relevant content. One of the things in the profile is also your preferred hospital. There might be communications that are specific, new services offered, things like that. And if we have that information, we're able to dynamically insert that so that we can customize their communication even beyond just, do they live in Western Maryland? But hey, do you live specifically next to this hospital and are interested in potentially updates coming from that? So far it's only been, like I mentioned, 6 months, but we've seen great performance, higher engagement rates than benchmark, higher open rates, and the content is a big piece that Lindsey just talked about that we need to fuel this. So if you're going to have a regional strategy, you need to have a lot of content that is regional based, pulling in those experts so that we can customize that for those individuals. So then jumping a little bit into kind of pivoting from email to Interaction Studio, we have worked with Interaction Studio, the last couple of years. We have a lot of content. We have a big subscriber base. So we were looking for, what do we do next? We're going to keep that strategy going. We're always looking to increase our subscribers and align that content. But how do we reach them really with the right message, increase the engagement and the loyalty, drive conversions, of course, looking for how do we support, the consumer, but also help support the brand. So Interaction Studio has helped us in a couple of key ways that I'll talk through. Number one is identifying life cycle stage. So not all content is written equally. You might be in a different stage of life, when you're reading one type of article on the blog versus if you're reading something maybe more clinical on the website. When we are looking at, kind of what that funnel is of the journey that you have with us, we want to take into consideration, are you kind of more in the awareness? Are you doing some research? Are you considering, going to a hospital? Do you need an appointment for something? Have you already converted maybe, and then we're pulling that information back in. we want to align the message with what your need is, or what we would anticipate your need to be based on that engagement. And this is a lot of pre-work. So, mapping that all out, analyzing everything that we had built to date was a long journey. I would say a good year of really focusing on that before we could even start journeys, because having that outlined is then where we can identify what content do we need to align with each of these stages. Where do we need to focus, whether it's based on kind of overall priority, or, we're seeing a big need on an article or this type of topic that we didn't anticipate. How can we pivot and make sure that we have good content to layer into that journey and, kind of expand on it from there. So that's I would say, a very important step that sometimes when you add a new module or you want to get started, like, oh, it lets me do all this great stuff, which is awesome. But it really takes a team to put that thought and kind of outline that roadmap first before you can activate. And sometimes that's a little challenging, because we're impatient, I think, digital marketers. We know that things can happen fast, but that work really does pay off. You'll see a lot of value of putting the time and effort into really planning out who do you want to reach, what do you want to reach them with, and making sure that you have all the resources across the board before you get started. The next one, deploying cross-channel. So once you have that strategy, looking for ways that you can then reach your consumers with that message, whether it's on the website, through email, there's a connection for direct mail within Interaction Studio, paid channels. And the opted-in consumers, when we have that first-party data, there's more opportunity to personalize for them. So really looking at, that's why we want to increase our subscribers so that we could leverage that through Interaction Studio as well. And then delivering more relevant experiences across the board. Everything we do is test and learn. We'll talk a little bit towards the end. I keep mentioning and reporting and results, and really we don't want to just put things out there and hope that they perform. Sometimes things don't work, and that's okay. But we want to be testing and analyzing the performance of all of our emails, all of our engagements, so that we can put that back into the modeling and figure out, okay, what should we do next? What's the next best message? Where's the next area to focus on? So just a couple of things that Interaction Studio has helped us with over these last few years. And then focusing a little bit more on, leveraging first-party data. The importance of first-party data, I think, cannot be overemphasized, especially in our current climate. So the more opted-in consumers, the more hand raisers we have, the better we can speak to them, the more information they provide us, the better that we can customize their messaging. So I think that's probably the theme, of the presentation. But there's a couple specific things that we're able to do that have helped us along the way kind of increase both engagement, loyalty, and conversions. One being deploying one-click subscribe. So we all know the less steps it takes for someone to convert, the higher our conversion rate. So recognizing that when someone clicks through our website from an email, offering them kind of a one-click, so they don't have to type in their email again, we already know who they are, but here's a potential kind of like a cross-sell. We know that you've engaged with this type of content, you might be interested in this newsletter. On the same, but kind of the opposite prong of that is, if we do not know that you are an email subscriber, we don't have your email, offering a very easy kind of inline, where you can just type your email, hit submit, so that it's an easy user experience, and we can start to get you into our database and start to understand your content preferences. It's kind of like you don't want, the pair of shoes that you already bought to follow you around. We don't want to be asking for email if we already have it. We want that experience to be personalized for that consumer. Customizing messaging. So, the more that we can do this, either based on kind of the segment that they fall into within our content preference, or, performance that they've had within one of our campaigns, being able to use that information to deliver them the next message, or potentially trigger new messages. So, if there's some type of engagement that we think a new email that hasn't existed before, there's a lot of situations where we're kind of working through that right now. It's not just a typical kind of planned out journey. We are seeing gaps and ways that, oh, you know what, after these types of actions, we think this would be really beneficial to deliver, and then putting that in and testing and seeing how that performs. So that's definitely something our team does a lot of. And like I mentioned, it's good when it performs well, and it's good when it doesn't perform well, because then that lets us know, this is not the right path. Let's dig in and figure out, is there something better? Is there a reason why it didn't work, or there was a certain drop off? Just gives us more data so that we can analyze what to do next. And then it's probably not a surprise that Salesforce is kind of at the center of our marketing, because we take that first party data, all that opted in information, and we analyze it. We look at the content preferences, the lifecycle drop off, the campaign engagement, anything that we have that we could leverage to then activate kind of across channel. So talk through that a little bit, but this is a little bit of a visual that just helps us understand that we really want to get that first party data and use it across all of our channels. It really delivers the best performance when we have that bi-directional sync, so that we can deliver the right content to the consumers and then hopefully result in the best conversions for the brand. And then reporting, my favorite. So as a media and marketer, and if there are anyone on the call that is a media person, we love our data, we love our graphs and our charts. So this is just one example that I wanted to pull out. So we really talk a lot about increasing our our subscriptions. So individual subscribers, adding more and more newsletters, but we wanted to make sure that we were not reaching a point where we hit kind of email fatigue, and we didn't want to see that drop off. Are we inundating people with too many emails? We have this plethora of content. We want to make sure that we're still delivering it in a manner that is making sense. So, this one I think is just sharing open rates, but we're looking at click-through rates and conversion rates and unsubscribe rates. But you'll see in this one that if they only get one email, so subscribers of just one actually have a slightly lower open rate than those kind of hyper engaged subscribers, which are subscribed to 2 to 10, I would say 2 to 5 is probably the sweet spot. I think 61 is probably me or Lindsey. So we do have some internal people that kind of show up at the end, but most of our users get, that 1 to 10, and we are seeing good engagement. So this is something that we continue to monitor, on a monthly basis to make sure that there's no red flags that we might need to drill into. Is something popping from an unsubscribe rate? Is the open rate starting to slip? Because we want to make sure that we're being thoughtful with how many communications. I'm sure that everyone can say they get too many emails. So we want to make sure that we're delivering relevant content. And I think based on this, we know that we're moving in the right direction in terms of how our content is resonating with our audience based on their performance. And then that one chart was just some examples. I did want to pull out a couple stats as well, because the best way to know if your marketing is working and your journeys are working is to analyze them and measure the results. So our audience first strategy has definitely delivered strong results. We have activated over 120, we kind of call them audience activations as we work through them internally. We have seen 200% increase year over year in our unique visitors to the preference center. So with that redesign, we saw a huge spike in people visiting, which in itself is not necessarily success. Like, okay, they could be going, to unsubscribe. But what we're finding is that visitors are opting into 50% more newsletters than they were in the previous preference center. So not only are they visiting, but they're opting into more and more newsletters. 40% is our initial conversion rate on that preference center pop-up. So again, looking for people to, if they'd like to offer their name and their zip code to help us personalize, especially from a regional standpoint, we're seeing a really strong conversion rate on that. People are interested in that more localized content. I know Ben talked a little bit about it at the beginning. So we're seeing that hold true, as well as the regional performance, because we're seeing such high engagement on that. So that's a path we will definitely continue to be expanding. And then 132% higher open rates on some of our engagement journey emails, which are really our emails that when we analyze what is the next best message, those are the ones that are getting put into those journeys that aren't quite planned out at the beginning, but are based on analysis of data and content and then delivered. And we're seeing really good engagement rates. Open rates, I think, is important. Click-through rates is becoming increasingly important, especially based on the Apple updates. So, continually changing. I know Lindsey mentioned, Google algorithms. There's always going to be changes in the market. So it's super important for us to stay on top of those and to make sure that we're looking at kind of all the performance metrics. I didn't mention, but I think Lindsey did, Domo. So Domo, as our data visualization tool, has really been crucial in being able to kind of splice and dice the data in 1,000 different ways for us to make sure that we can see, the nuances of how far down in the email did they scroll and click through, like is the content at the bottom resonating as much as the top, how are interactive emails performing, how are regional versus non-regional. Really, if we could think it's built out in there, which has been really helpful to make sure that we're looking at that performance and making our decisions based on data and based on the performance of our consumers, and then delivering what they're looking for, hopefully. So
just to Christine, I know we're kind of wrapping it up. I mean, we've done a lot of the information and given a lot of the data, but I just wanted to say one thing that Christine just mentioned, and just add to that, is that it makes us feel that we are doing the right thing and we are making the right decisions and we are giving the right message and the right content. So as we've grown this program and grown this strategy, the information and the partnership with Salesforce has really given us, I think, the look ahead window that we need in order to make sure that we're growing in the right direction and that we have the right content aligned with the right consumers, and that consumers know that when they need something, they've already engaged with UPMC and they know that we are going to be here for them and that we're going to offer the right information they need when they need it. So I just wanted to kind of say that these numbers are important to us because they show us not so much that we're doing good as marketers, which we hope that we are, but more importantly, from a healthcare perspective, that we're reaching people that are really in need of that type of content. As marketers, we don't always get to be the lifesavers that our doctors do or our clinical staff do, but if we can help in any way, shape, or form get the consumer or get the potential patient to the right doctor, to the right service, understand what their condition might be, then maybe we do a little bit of good in this world outside of just being the marketers who are being creepy and chasing everybody down. Instead, we really hope to do the opposite of that and make sure that we're just connecting people with the right information they need when they need it. And with that, I think we're going to go back to Ben.
Yeah, wonderful content from both of you, Lindsey and Christine. And to your last point, I think that, you know, a lot of times what this kind of content that you're talking about will do, it keeps people engaged with the hospital system, but it also helps make them healthier, help them make healthier choices. And when we saw the pandemic hit and we saw so many people who were having real struggles with the pandemic, or, you know, with their health when they got COVID, a lot of those struggles were because of those comorbidities that they could do something about, obesity or diabetes or stopping smoking, that kind of stuff. And so I'm super excited about what your strategy is here. I think you're having a bigger impact maybe than you're giving yourself credit for. And we've gotten so much interaction on this webinar. There's no way to ask all of these questions and answer all of these questions. But there are some that there have been a lot that have had a similar sort of feel to them. So would you talk about how your team has come together? How many members are on your team? How do you manage your editorial calendar? Where does the content team sit versus, you know, the email production team? Can you sort of talk through what your team looks like?
Yeah, I'll start that one off. And then Christine, if you want to fill in the gaps that I'm sure I'll miss, just let me know. So the way that UPMC is structured is my boss is the vice president of digital marketing. So what we do is we oversee really all of the digital marketing components, not only for UPMC, but also for all of UPMC, but then also for all the service lines and the campaigns that we run. And so I sit over top of the digital strategy services team. And I really think that we're more of an activation team, maybe a little bit of both. And we are structured that there is a core group of people who work with the different clinical service marketers, clinical marketing services, and they're able to step in and help with campaigns or align the right type of digital marketing strategy with the overall system-wide initiatives. And there is another group, and that's my SEO group. And SEO is the group that obviously does all of our SEO or technical SEO. They do a lot of work with how do patients have the right experience online, and how are we making sure that we're connecting the dots for them. We also have social media, we have email marketing. Christine heads up the paid media and what I call audience activations. Again, she works really closely with another team, which is our marketing intelligence team. And then we also have the content strategy team. And so all of those groups, there's a lot of us at UPMC, but we work really well together. We have a lot of meetings, a lot of brainstorming sessions where we talk about how are we going to make sure that we have all of the right strategies in place to support all of the system-wide initiatives. As far as the content team goes, again, we've been really lucky to have a core leadership group that really understands the need for content. And so we have an internal content team that sits under digital marketing. My colleague actually oversees a digital marketing or the digital content team. I oversee digital strategy services, and then my other colleague oversees web and UX. And we all really just work together to make sure that we're doing the right things and we have the right communications and the right content ready to support all the digital activation channels that really are overseen by my group. And I'm trying to think, we have, again, it's just really about communication, making sure that you have the right people at the table to have all of those conversations and make sure all those needs are met. Christina, do you want to add anything to that? I'm sure.
We have passionate people. I know that's not team specific, but in terms of the people who just want to do good work and work together to really deliver quality content, I feel like is key. No, I think, we work with some good agencies that also help us from an execution standpoint. I think I might have saw some questions about that. So we do some of that in-house. We work with a partner because the volume of that, as you can imagine, is very large. So we do use some agency support to help with strategy and execution, especially from the email side and the paid media side as well. So that's always helpful. But I mean, our internal team and that communication, I agree, is really key.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And do you focus on like medical content writers, or do you focus more on, maybe, more of an engagement content? What's your focus there when you're considering putting a new article out?
So we have a little bit of all of that. If you were to ask me, we have, and I mentioned them a little bit ago, and for those of you who are joining from a healthcare system, so you have your clinical marketers, and they really are the ones that are knee deep in the clinical marketing speak, if you will. They speak with the doctors. They know what those service lines need. They know the medical speak, the medical terms. And so that's one of the reasons the partnership is so important. The digital marketing team and the content writers from digital marketing are more journalistic in style, if you will. They come from more of a journalism background. And so they have beautiful writing skills, but they marry that with the SEO team. So we're kind of populating and again, looking at the right types of topics to add into the content. But then the clinical marketing team comes in that partnership, and they really help us understand the conditions and the type of information that the doctors need to help promote their service lines. Again, we partner with a CMS platform, and we partner with another agency that helps us do a lot of the writing, because I would be remiss if I said we were doing this all in-house. That's not a fair assertion. We do have a large team. We are very lucky. We could always have more people, but everybody could always have more people. So one of the ways in which we're able to do this without losing people every week because they are exhausted is we do partner with some agencies that help us do a lot of the writing. But it's really, there's in-house writing, there's agency writing. But again, at the end of the day, we're trying to be smart marketers. That's why the data is really critical and imperative, because what we can do is we're putting out different information about different service lines. We can see which type of content and which service lines really get a lot of engagement. And then we can layer different types of information on about the region. Where is the volume coming from? And then we can create the content that is smarter and not just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, which is what we probably were doing 10 years ago. So a lot of that is making smart decisions based off the data we're seeing. It's a lot of SEO and keyword research. It's good writers from a journalistic standpoint so that the content is interesting, but it's also a lot of the engagement and the intelligence that comes from the people who have spent a lot of years on the clinical side who are able to give us that perspective as well. Christine, anything to add?
That was very comprehensive.
Thanks.
Speaking of data, I know one of the things that we're seeing a lot on the Salesforce side is a desire to move from being data rich to being data driven, right? Yeah. And I know that you're talking about that because there's so many data points, and which ones do you care about, and where do you go, and how do you make the right decisions? I always say data allows you to do one of two things. It either allows you to make a decision to improve what you're doing, or it allows you to tell the story of your success and how you're bringing value to the organization. So we've got some people asking questions about both of those data points. People asking about how do you justify your spend? Maybe do you have any return on investment reporting? And then how do you kind find data that, which data points are you looking at to maybe tweak what you're doing midstream to be more successful?
So I'll take that one to start. I think that your two options, there's a third one, which is analysis paralysis, where there's just so much data that you just want to hide. But no, I mean, Domo, again, the data visualization I mentioned, having access to all of that, I think helps us determine what is the best metric. I'll go back to the one slide where I talked about the life cycle stages and really determining what do we want consumers to do. So we know we want engagement and we want loyalty. What does that look like? Of course, we look at things like open rate and click-through rate. Recently switching more to click-through rate, especially based on the changes. That's another thing that I think, as the industry changes, I think that's probably going to change how we evaluate success and how we determine, what is working and what's not working. From an ROI standpoint, because our communications are really consumer based, we're not looking at it from a, patient ROI, but from an engagement and kind of loyalty ROI, we use those metrics to determine, is this above benchmark? How does it compare to previous years? Some of the recent work we've been working on is updating. So 100 plus newsletters, you can imagine, some of them have been running for a while. So making sure that we have, consistent refreshes of templates and the way that we're outlining that content. So that has a very different goal in terms of how we measure it versus the engagement journey that we might be launching based on more recent content preferences. So it's not really just one or two metrics that we're looking at. It depends on what that strategy is and making sure that we're aligning with a metric that we can make decisions based on. So is it actionable data? Some things are nice to have. And some things are more, I guess, actionable really is the best word of what can we do next based on this information? Do we, follow it up with something more? Do we cut it because we don't feel like it's performing, kind of based on that roadmap that we built with the life cycle stages? But knowing that our overall goals are really that loyalty and conversion, and then using those kind of as our North Star to determine where does this strategy roll up and which metrics should we be using to evaluate it. Lindsey, anything to add there?
No. All of that work to finally unmute just to say no. No, I think you very, very well handled that one.
Awesome. How do you tie in service line or topical content along with your regional and your hospital content? How do you kind of walk both of those lines there?
So that again goes back to the communication and the way that the department is set up. So to expand just a little bit on the way the department is set up is, if you look at the way UPMC is, we have our CMO and he basically oversees all of clinical marketing, all of digital marketing, marketing intelligence, and brand. And also all of the service lines are under the clinical marketing team. And so they really set the priorities for the year with his leadership and with the leadership of the whole system, if you will. And so what we're looking to do is kind of prioritize the type of content that needs to support those larger initiatives. And we meet on a monthly basis, if not more often than that, with the clinical marketers to talk about the type of content that needs to be designed for different service line campaigns. So that's where the clinical marketing service line type of content comes in. And we don't usually market individual hospitals. Instead, we try to look at the regions where the care is needed. And then we talk about the different services or conditions that might need to be highlighted in within those service lines. Then we do the content in that way. But if you talk about kind of health and wellness and umbrella content, that's really what digital marketing is responsible for. And that, again, I've given it a couple shout outs now, but the HealthBeat blog is really designed around health and wellness content and non-service line specific, if you will. So you may find anything from, why does my chest hurt to, anything about, let's talk Pride Month just happened. We talk about transitioning later in life. We have every type of content you could possibly need under that. And then what we'll do is sometimes we'll have clinical marketing come to us for the newsletters and we'll kind of mix and match that content. So for a regional newsletter, if you will, we will look at something that is very specific to that region that can be really beneficial to people within that region or about that hospital or service line. But then we also do some general health and wellness content within those as well. So again, we're kind of hitting two different areas. We're hitting a patient-focused type of content that people may need to find care, advanced care, the type of care they're looking for. But then we also want to show them that if you are looking for any type of healthcare information or you need a partner in your health and wellness, we are that partner, and you can find content ranging from A to Z right there on HealthBeat. Christine, anything to add?
No, that was great. The only thing I guess I would say is the blog, like you mentioned, really helps when we have the blog newsletter, which can kind of cover a variety of those kind of general health and wellness topics. But because we also have the service line specific newsletters, and again, I'd encourage everyone to sign up so you can check them out. But it gives us opportunity to, like Lindsey said, mix and match with the dynamic content so that we can start to localize. So really, it's all consumer based, but depending on your preference, we're able to kind of match that together so that we can give you the best content that you're looking for.
Yeah, and you've mentioned dynamic content a couple of times. I know that when I was leading a marketing team, dynamic content really allowed us to do a lot of really cool things and be very personalized at scale. And I think that it's really important that people master dynamic content. And that's why whenever I'm having conversations with healthcare systems that are just starting out with their marketing cloud instance, I will often tell them, hey, you should start with a newsletter. This is where you should begin so that you can really get good at that stuff. You can really, a newsletter allows you to really dive into what Marketing Cloud can really give you and the tools. And then you can branch out from there. And if you want to do, some sort of an in-depth journey, go for it. But you've really been able to dig in and understand what's available.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just starting. Oh, sorry, Ben. Really just starting small, which is when we started doing dynamic content, we didn't do dynamic content in every email, as much as we can. It's really starting with, okay, let's do it on one newsletter. Let's do it with one content block. Let's measure it. Let's test it. Then let's roll it out to another one, see what we learn. It's really about building blocks and just taking step by step, probably really with everything, but especially I think within the Salesforce Marketing Cloud.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know that we're coming up to the end of the conversation, and we could, with the expertise that you ladies bring, we could be here for another 2 or 3 hours, and everybody would still be gleaning amazing truths. But with the last few minutes that we have, what would you say are maybe the 3 most important takeaways from today's session?
Do you want me to start, Lindsey?
Learn how to use an unmute button before you present at a webinar. Well, no, joking aside, if I had 3, they're probably not as marketing focused as they are looking at from a team standpoint. It's really my job to look at the overall roadmap for the department and really try to figure out from a management perspective, how are we going to get the best work and also make sure that everybody is really engaged with the work that they do. And if I were to say anything as far as how do we find success, it really lies within the team and the people within our team, and also being able to not only work well as a smaller team, which we are within the overall infrastructure of UPMC, but finding ways in which to reach out to other areas within the system to make sure that we are all on the same page and we're all marching towards the same goals. And really, when you think about it, we all have ownership of the data and we all have ownership of the content. We all have ownership of what we bring to the table and how we work to make sure that UPMC is thinking about consumers first and patients first. So the number 1 takeaway should be build a really strong team that is really engaged and really interested in teamwork. 2, build a team that is really, that your morals and your thoughts and your ethics and all of that are centered around the patient and the consumer, and making sure that all the work that you do kind of comes back to that as your kind of North Star. But then the other one is, and this is less kind of altruistic and more about making sure you do have a team that is interested in innovation and technology, because when we started 20 something years ago in marketing, for all of you that are kind of in my age group, we avoided data, we avoided math, we avoided all of that. We went into communications and marketing because we didn't have to do a lot of that stuff, but it's critical now. It's really critical to make sure that you understand how technology works, that you understand how data can not only inform you, but really support your career and help you grow in all of those areas. And it's really important to make sure that everybody is on the same page as far as how that goes. But Christine probably has her own 3.
Give me all the math.
Christine and I are the perfect pair in a lot of ways. I'm the communicator, and she's a fantastic communicator, but she is equally as brilliant a mathematician and a data nerd. So that's your fourth takeaway for free.
Yes, that's a good takeaway. No, I would just say, I mean, I feel like we talked about a little bit, nothing happens overnight. It really is a long journey, if you will, and putting that pre-work into it. I think the tools are great. Salesforce especially, there are so many tools to do so many, amazing things and customize things, but without a strategy to lead it, without knowing who you want to reach and why you want to reach and what you want them to do, the tool is just a tool. So it's really important to have that strategy piece, work cross team, like Lindsey mentioned. Those would probably be my two big ones. I think take your failures, your not so great performance as a lesson and a learning, and just the opportunity to optimize.
Yeah, that's great. I love the saying "fail forward," right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. So, Lindsey, Christine, amazing content. Thank you so much. A lot of times at Salesforce, we talk about the art of the possible. Man, today you talked about the art of the practical, and we really appreciate so much you sharing your expertise here. Well, with that, I want to thank our audience for joining us today. Thank you so much for being a part of the trailblazing community. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Daniel to close us out.
Thank you, Ben. I'm sure the audience joins me in thanking you, Lindsey, and Christine for that terrific presentation. And to all of you in our audience, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Please note that if you asked a question, and you guys did, it was awesome, that we weren't able to get to, we'll do our best to get a response to you. We'll also be sending out a link of the webinar recording, so watch out for that within the next few days. That concludes today's program. We hope to see you at future forum webinars, as well as next year's Healthcare Marketing and Physicians Strategy Summit. It will be April 17th to 19th in Austin. Please visit the forum website, healthcarestrategy.com, for all the details. Finally, be sure to give us your feedback by completing the evaluation survey as you exit the webinar. Thank you, and have a great day.